Celeste has been out for long enough that I think it's fairly good knowledge, or fairly public knowledge at least, that there is a bonus berry you can get, the Winged Golden Berry, for beating the first chapter without dashing. This is a challenge I like to go back to every once in a while, but this time, instead of beating the chapter without dashing, I wanted to see if there were any other buttons you could beat Chapter 1A of Celeste without using. The buttons we have to look at are left, right, down, up, jump, and grab. Now, obviously, there is dash, but we already covered it. That's the one everyone knows. We'll start by looking at left. Now, in a game that's mostly about going right and up, you'd expect that left would be easy. And barring a couple rooms where it feels nice to be able to go left, but ultimately unnecessary, at the start, you would be extremely correct. Here, we get to show off the fact that I am so used to completing rooms in one way that for some reason, no matter what, I keep trying to complete rooms that way. I don't need to land on these left platforms, but I'm so used to doing so to complete these screens that it takes me a little bit of time to remember that I don't have to. On this next room, this little spiked platform seems like it might be impossible to get past, but as it turns out, there's a small mechanic that helps us out, which is that if you are holding the direction of a wall and sliding down it, when you press jump, you temporarily jump off the wall and turn around. This allows us to dash to the other side of this wall and allows us to complete this screen. This screen also causes a little bit of issues, but with a well-placed wall bounce, we can just barely avoid the spikes on this falling platform. Not too difficult. After making it to the other side of this screen, I thought that I had made a mistake because I accidentally passed the exit that we need to go to. I'm too far to the right, so I attempted to retry to set me back to the beginning. When you retry after making it to this spot on the screen, you are just spawned in facing left. This allows you to very easily dash out and up, which unfortunately brings us to the final screen of left button pressing. Unfortunately, again, as far as I can tell, there is no way to complete this screen. It seems like it should be possible. You can get very close to potentially being able to jump over to the middle platform, but I didn't even make it to that platform. It is a very difficult jump to make if it's even possible. And even if you make it there, the rest of the screen does not look like you'd be able to make it. You would either have to dash to the left to avoid the first set of spikes, in which case you can't make it past the second set, or you would have to jump to the left, which you can't do. So that is the end of no left. Which brings us to our next button, no right. Now, as I said, in a game about going right and up, you might expect that right would be a much, much more difficult button to avoid using, and you'd be correct. It kind of stalls on the second screen of the game. It does seem that these first spikes are impossible to get past. Since you can't move right, you can only rely on the momentum and distance from your dash. And even when I got a little boost here off of these corners, I would still end up dying to the far edge of the spikes. No right ends a lot faster than no left. Which brings us to no up. There are two things, one of them is split into three technically, but two things that you cannot do if you do not have up. You cannot do controlled climbing. The only way to climb would be to jump up a wall or neutral jump. And you cannot dash up. You cannot dash up left or right, which is why I said it could potentially be three things. But for a large portion of this chapter, that is just simply not needed. It's the first room that seems like it might cause some issue, but really just a couple well-placed jumps. It's not that difficult of a room. Another one where you need a kind of precise jump. You do have a one chunk jump that you need to make, but once again, even without the dashes, it's not holding you back. Dashing up is kind of nice on this one, but in case you hadn't figured this out already, if you don't need to dash at all to beat the chapter, you definitely don't need to dash up. And the rest of the chapter is much the same until we get to the end. That means that it is possible to beat Chapter 1A without the up key. And I'll save you the time, down is exactly the same. There's basically nothing that down restricts you from doing if you don't have access to the button. Like, yeah, you can't do some like speed tech, like you can't do hypers, you can't do wave dashes, but you definitely don't need that to do 1A. I'm pretty sure those aren't introduced until Core and Farewell anyway. So, similar to Up, yes, you can beat Chapter 1A without down. Brings us to a really tough one, Jump. Jump is probably the second most important mechanic in the game, really the first most important mechanic for 1A, since we already know you don't need dashes. So, is it possible? Well, it starts off going pretty well, but then we make it to the screen where we had to introduce a little bit of tech for no left. Unfortunately, for no jump, that little bit of tech just doesn't exist. For this room, really what you need to do is have access to, without using stuff like wall bounces, you need to have access to at least one jump and one dash before the crystal, which I guess a wall bounce is a jump and a dash, so you do need it there as well. Without having jumps, we only have access to one dash. You could also do it with two dashes, we don't have access to that, or two jumps, we don't have access to that. So this room cuts no jump quite short. And that brings us to our final button, Grab. Now, if you're a fan of Celeste challenge runs, or just maybe even challenge runs in general, you might know of the channel Sample. And they have already done a complete video over the entirety of Celeste. I don't think they did Core or Farewell, but it's been a while since I've seen the video, showing Celeste without any grabs. Not that they need me to say it, but if you haven't seen that video, go watch it. It's pretty good. If you want to see what the entirety of Celeste, at least the base game, main game, looks like without grabs, there's a full video for you there. But, like I said, it's been a while since I've seen that video, so I don't remember how it goes, and this will only be covering Chapter 1 anyway. Fortunately, without grabs, all you really need is to be pretty good at neutral jumps. Unfortunately, I am pretty bad at neutral jumps. This makes some of these rooms significantly more difficult than they would need to be, but none of them are really too much of an issue. It is until we come across this screen. We need to get this moving block out of the way, and the only way to do that is to land on top, there are spikes, or to grab it. I don't have access to grab. Now, luckily, when I was learning Celeste speedrunning, the first thing I learned was how to complete this room without doing any of that. And it's quite simple. Bear in mind, that doesn't mean I'm going to get it done quickly, and that doesn't mean I'm good at it, but it is simple. You just do one extended, I believe it's technically a wave dash because you start in the air, but it might be a hyper. You might be able to do it as a hyper by standing there. And then with your extra dash that you have, you dash up into the gap. The next screen also has a slight issue because you can't activate this block to launch you across the screen, but that is still pretty easy. We couldn't get over to that block on no left either. This screen also requires a kind of precise neutral jump. Not too bad though. Which brings us to the final screen of Chapter 1A, and another bit of, stop me if you've heard this one before, speedrunning tech that I learned pretty early on into my learning of the Celeste speedrun and am bad at. But you can just neutral jump up this wall since you can't activate either of these moving platforms. You neutral jump up this left wall. Once you get to the top, you dash up right. You hit a jump right as you pass this corner here, and you land on the platform. I believe if you're really good at it, you can land on this left platform and save yourself like a couple of frames, but this one's not about going fast, it's about not grabbing. And that brings us to the end of the chapter. I'd like to thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, do all that YouTube stuff, you know, like, comment, subscribe, tell me how I messed up real bad. It turns out that when you can't press right, you can boost off that corner and do some weird tech to, I don't know. If I knew, I would have done it. But if you know anything about that, let me know. Thanks for watching. See you next time. It was very generic, but a real outro? What happened to me?